Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill has been in process for about a year. It originated with the President of the Senate, and it was handled in the Senate by the Chairman of Judiciary. And this is the restorative justice bill that I have spoken of on more than one occasion in this chamber. And the idea is around the fact that we know that we have many people that are addicted to substances, whether it be drugs or alcohol, and many people are getting picked up on possession charges and things of that nature. And then what occurs is they go into, they get a felony designation more often than not. They get released without adequate or significant treatment, and then they wind up being recidivist and wind up being regular players in the criminal justice system, all at the expense of the taxpayer and all without getting the necessary treatment that they need to get better. So we have worked with several entities over a long period of time in an effort to bring this to this floor, to this body, and to prepare a plan. And I'm not going to go through all of the things with you, but I'm going to go through several things with you. First of all, we've designated who can qualify, and going to some questions that were given earlier today, violent offenders do not qualify, sex crimes don't qualify. An offense against a person who has a protective order in place doesn't qualify. And an act of dating domestic or domestic violence and abuse doesn't qualify. But if you qualify on the other charges and you're accepted into the program, then you will get a clinical assessment with regards to a substance abuse disorder or a mental health disorder. And if you don't have a previous conviction of a Class A, B, or C felony, or a D felony, that doesn't eliminate you from a qualifying offense. You will be assessed at pretrial as a low-risk, low-level offender, and then it's approved by the prosecutor. So what really it is deferred prosecution, basically making an opportunity for people that have made poor choices to have an avenue, to be assessed, to go, to get treatment. There's also provisions in this bill for workforce job interviews, vocational training, etc., with the idea of trying to get them off of the substance abuse addiction, to get them back into the workforce, and to stop recidivism. Now, the way it works is within 72 hours of arrest, they will undergo a clinical assessment. The jailer will contact the assessor. They can be performed in person or via telehealth. If there's a substance abuse disorder or mental disorder, then they can put them into the program. If it's something other than that, they can be rejected for the program. Now, once that's all set up, they go into a treatment program. And there's a treatment plan that's established. And here's the interesting thing. The provider of the treatment is who sets the time for the program. The program is targeted at being at least a year, but it can be less than a year or greater than a year if the provider determines that it's in the best interest of the individual for that to occur. The attorneys, the Commonwealth attorney and the defense attorney, will get regular progress reports, because certainly if a person isn't compliant, they could be kicked out of the program. A case manager can be assigned to keep track of all the components of the plan and gather the information so that we have data. And I believe that there may be a friendly floor amendment that discusses a piece of that. This can include inpatient treatment, therapy, and counseling. It also can involve adult education programs. And it links the defendant with peer support programs. Now, on the great assumption that someone successfully completes this program, their charge will be dismissed. So they are not going to be tagged as a felon. That will enable them to have greater opportunities to enter into the workforce and get greater jobs. And hopefully, because of the treatment being provided, they will not be recidivist and will not wind up back into the system. Now, there is an implementation council established through this program, and it's a pilot program that will be covered in 10 areas. Initially, in the bill that was filed originally, the 10 areas were listed. Upon further discussion with Commonwealth attorneys, not all areas are ready to run this program quite yet. And because of that, they're going to defer that choice to the Chief Justice to work with the AOC, Department of Justice, and the counties to determine who would work within this program. Now, the idea is to obviously help people and not hurt people. So with regards to that, there have been a few amendments added to this, and I'm going to ask the clerk to report. The House Committee Sub 1.
Clerk, please report.
House Committee Substitute 1 to Senate Bill 90.
Gentleman from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This committee substitute will move the start date from October 1 of 2022 to January 1 of 2023 at the request of the stakeholders, the people that I told you that were working on this program. It will adjust the reporting dates accordingly, and nothing regarding the initial assessment will be interpreted as an implied waiver of confidentiality. We were working on getting the case managers, and we're also making sure that we have recovery housing available for what we believe are at least 200 participants to actually start the program. With that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I would move for the adoption of House Committee Sub 1.
Motion is for the adoption of House Committee Substitute 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Committee Substitute 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Boone.
Finally, Mr. Speaker, I'd ask the clerk to report House Floor Amendment 1.
Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 1 to Senate Bill 90.
Gentleman from Boone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This simply is a one-sentence change that when it goes to the recovery areas, that the recovery areas or recovery housing will be certified by the National Alliance for Recovery Resident Standards. In other words, we don't want to put people into recovery housing if the housing is not adequate, nor if it supports their issues that they're dealing with. We want to make sure that they're handled properly. So with that, I would move for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 1.
Motion is for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Floor Amendment 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Boone.
Okay. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield to the lady from Kenton 64 for a friendly floor amendment.
Chair recognizes the friendly lady from Kenton 64.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask the clerk to please report House Floor Amendment 2.
Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 2 to Senate Bill 90.
Lady from Kenton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All this amendment does is allows for a provision to encourage treatment providers to utilize a digital format for notifications and other reminders for individuals who are in treatment. This is a new technology which is being made available and greatly enhances any reentry services. And I would, if there are no questions, move adoption of House Floor Amendment 2.
Motion is for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 2. Is there any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Floor Amendment 2 is adopted. Gentleman from Boone, 66.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Finally, there will be a lot of data collected through this process. The only way we're seeing whether this kind of program will be successful is by collection of that data. I think we all recognize that probably anywhere between 70 to 85% of our incarcerated people in Kentucky are due to drug or alcohol or violence-related offenses or theft-related offenses that are all tied to this particular problem, this drug problem that we have within our country. Today, the Senate passed House Bill 215, which dealt with fentanyl. So we realize that there's a real issue here. I do want to take a moment to commend the gentleman from Christian 3, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, for his hard work. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank the drafter in this case, who basically started at square one with no idea of where this was going to go or where it was going to land up. and has spent countless hours. She's here with us in the room to help me if I would need it. Ms. Roberta Kaiser, thank you. And I say that because this wasn't a typical bill that you just are taking statutory language. We are creating this program from the ground up. And we believe that it will be very good for the Commonwealth. It will lower our rates of incarceration, which will save money for the taxpayers, and it will return people to work, which will support workplace investment. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I would move for passage of Senate Bill 90 as amended by House Committee Sub 1, House Floor Amendment 1, and House Floor Amendment 2.